What's going on, y'all? Kevin Kuhn here from Athlete Factors. I'm with my friend Divan Augustyn. My apologies. So, let's jump right into it. Divan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Divan, anything goes. I'm a physiotherapist, which is, I think, the equivalent of a physical therapist in the United States. I'm from South Africa, and I currently work in professional football. Bit of a dual role in terms of physical therapy or physiotherapy and also fitness training. I do high performance management at a football club in China at the moment where I'm employed.
Nice.
So it's been a fun journey working in some different continents. I'm chatting to you from Vienna at the moment as well, where we live currently. So we do some contract work and stuff. But I've been in the industry for about 14 years or so.
Nice.
Done undergraduate, postgraduate, masters in sports medicine, busy with a doctorate in physical therapy in the States. And then from there, it's all about gaining experience through experience, right? Speaking to a lot of people, stealing a lot with your eyes, and just enjoying this wonderful field that we're in. Sports medicine. Pretty cool.
I like that. Stealing with your eyes. That's genius.
I think it might be the best tip I've ever received from somebody in terms of how to get better at what you're doing. So
For sure.
Maybe we should say learning with our eyes and then keeping the info. So good.
I like
no
it.
textbook can teach you that.
That's true. That's very true. So, the basic way we got connected was, so I grew up in the Philippines. Your wife grew up in the Philippines. We went to the same school. We've sort of stayed in touch. I lived in Ohio. That's where I'm from. She's from Illinois, so not too far away. We had visited each other like a time or two in high school and college, and just sort of stayed kind of in touch. I knew she was traveling all over, and then all of a sudden, there's this guy showing up on her Instagram, and he's like this legit training guy. Like, he's putting up awesome videos of his own workouts, but what really caught my eye was you were doing some speed training stuff with these soccer guys. Sorry, everybody, football guys. So, talk to us a little bit about how you made your way into working as a physio in China. Like, that's pretty cool stuff. So.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey to get there. I thought it was classic that you said football versus soccer. It's something I'm still getting used to as well. Now that I'm married to somebody who's from the United States, so I got to get the words right as well. But backtrack a little bit. Before I ended up in China, I started working for a football club in South Africa, soccer club in South Africa. I was not a soccer player myself. I was a sprinter. I did 400-meter hurdles.
Nice.
And I coached track and field before I got into soccer coaching. And I got into soccer coaching by working for a football club as a physiotherapist, just on a part-time basis. And it ended up at that stage, the manager that we had, they didn't have a fitness coach. And he said, look, you've coached some track and field. Give it a shot at the soccer. Take a session a week. Let's see how it goes. And we take it from there. And, 1 week led to the next, and so on and so on. And they ended up employing me full-time as a fitness coach, where I ended up starting a bit of a dual role, which was nice because you do the fitness training, and if the guys get injured, you get to fix them. So you can't break them too much, So it was actually quite interesting. But from there, I ended up working at that club for 6 years. I was very fortunate to work with an exceptional managers, actually. Clive Barker was the first one. He's the most successful soccer coach in South African history. He's won the African Nations Cup with him.
Oh, nice.
Also won the league the most times. And this guy's an absolute and utter motivator, which was really fantastic. It motivated me to be in the profession even more, enjoy the profession more, especially from a soccer perspective. Just the way he spoke to the players and the way he did things, I think was just phenomenal and very, very motivating. And then thereafter, I worked with our national team captain, who was the captain when we won the Nations Cup, also played for a very big club in South Africa and so on. And then from there, after about 6 years, I looked at moving on. In terms of getting a new, just broadening my horizons, maybe going abroad from South Africa, working for a new club. And it literally was a leap of faith where I had been offered another contract for 3 years with this club. They kind of gave us 3 years contracts at a time. At that stage, I'd been the head of medical there. And I decided, look, this is not the time for me to do that. I'm going to take some time off, maybe 4 months or so, travel Central America or whatever. And then I had the meeting in the afternoon. I think it was 2:30 on a Friday to say I'm not taking the contract. And 11 a.m. the next morning, I got another phone call to say, hey, we've got a job for you in China. Can you fly on Monday?
Wow.
So that was a leap of faith to go for holiday, and my holiday got busted. But instead of going to Mexico, I went to Hong Kong. But no, so that was fantastic. It was the real blessing, I think. And I've now worked in China for just over 4 years. Really enjoyed it. Again, worked with some wonderful managers at the moment. First with Sven Eriksson, who was the former England manager, who was just a real legend, and again a wonderful man manager. There's a reason why this guy is so successful. It's just because he's so excellent at what he does. So again, very fortunate to learn from someone with some really high quality. And then at the moment, I'm working with a magnificent player, Dragan Stojkovic, who was, I think, in his second stint of coaching. He was very successful in Japan as a player and then also as a coach. And I just moved to R&F. So I've had worked with R&F in China with Sven. Then we went to Shanghai SIPG. And then after that got finished, now again back at R&F with Mr. Stojkovic. So interesting story. And that's where I met my wife as well. So it was a good move. It was good that I didn't stay in South Africa.
That's so awesome. It's crazy how, if you try to plan your life out, like pick specific things, like I'm going to be in this location at this time, and if you try to stick to that and you kind of don't let, life happen while you're living it, like you never know. You just never know. So I'm sure that was a solid move.
Yeah, you got to pull up your adventure socks and say, what's next? Life is not just the goals we set for ourselves, but it is also the journey. And the journey really is magnificent. If you look back, keep enough journals and so on, you truly realize, wow, yeah, man, I've actually learned way much more out of this experience than I anticipated or would have ever dreamt of or thought. So here I am in a position where I'm actually successful, and maybe a bit of a windy road to get to where I've wanted to be, but it's worked. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, one of the things a mentor of mine during my undergrad internship told me was, especially in this industry, there's no straight lines to get to where you want to be. You've got to go over here and gain some experience, and then you're going to have to go over there and gain some experience, and then you do enough of that and you'll eventually end up, where you want to be. Or your idea of exactly where you want to be might change, and that's okay too. But there's no A to B. It's you're gonna hit a couple more letters in between.
Well, exactly, and it's about making it your own, right? And that perfect picture that we always have is probably more perfect because of the little side steps we take and the detours we take when we get there. So it's pretty fascinating.
It is. So talked a little bit about track. That's what I did in high school and college as well. So I ran the 400 hurdles, I think maybe 2 or 3 times, just because I did the steeplechase. So I was like long distance hurdles, but there were a couple times where at conference meets it was a weak enough field that the coach was like, hey, why don't you just try this and just see what happens. It was not fun, but
the old man killer, right? We're slapping you in this race and hang on, son.
It's brutal. It's brutal. So, and I can hurdle, a barrier, but that's every 40 meters and you're not sprinting. But when you're trying to get around that track as fast as you can, those hurdles come up on you quick. So
you must be a quick person, man. That's why. Well, the thing about 4-meter hurdles is that it's all stride pattern, it's strategy. Yes. It takes an incredible amount of dedication, a lot of hard training, and a lot of listening and learning about your body, which I think for guys like us in this field is really fantastic, because I think a 400 hurdler really knows what lactic acid is, where I think a lot of general sports physicians, for example, they throw that term out there, but I'm not sure if they always know what it is. But it is a bit of a man killer, but it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, a lot of good training, but at least you end up being extremely fit. So that's cool.
It'll either kill you or it'll turn you into a man. That's for sure.
That's true.
So I'm a bit of a soccer fan. My favorite team is Arsenal in English Premier League. So did you find it hard to just kind of become a fan of the sport, or were you kind of a fan already before you started working with soccer athletes? So how did that transition kind of occur?
Yeah. Well, before I answer your question, I almost might have to end the call because I'm a Spurs fan. And of course, Arsenal and Spurs don't like each other much.
Well,
we had a bit of a disappointing result the other day in the Champions League final. We were there, so that's no good. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, interestingly enough, I was never a soccer player in school. My school didn't have the sport, but I played field hockey, which to a degree, positional-wise, could be similar if you think about it to football. Not really, but it could.
Oh. I think I'm losing you here. Give me 1 second. Let's see if it catches up with us. Alrighty, y'all. We're just gonna pause and we will start this over. Alrighty, so back to I had to cut the connection when you were talking about being a Spurs fan. I couldn't handle it. So
of course. Well, we were anticipating that's going to happen because you're an Arsenal fan. Let's not fool ourselves.
Yeah, no, that was a fun game to watch. But after the second minute, it was like, I was like, man, I don't know. This is either gonna, like, Tottenham's gonna shut off, or they're gonna say, you know what, it doesn't even matter. And they kept pressing. They weren't done. So I got to give them credit. They worked their butts off trying to catch back up. But Liverpool, man, they're just, what can you do? What can you do against Liverpool? So
yeah, it is what it is. I must say, even though I wanted Spurs to win, I'm very, very happy for Jurgen Klopp. As a manager, I admire him a lot, specifically because of the way he trains and what he does with his players from a running perspective, being an athlete myself. I think there are people in our circuit that give him an incredible amount of criticism, saying that he does too much with the players and he overruns them. But he really does get it right to sort of, increase the size of their gas tanks, for lack of a better explanation, to make them run more, carry more ADP, working on those rate limiting factors to produce energy. And he really does get those guys to cover some distance during a game, which is fantastic. So all credit to him, and it was long overdue for him to win it. So well done.
For sure. Yeah, to make it to back-to-back Champions League finals, like, he's got to be doing something right. And it's so easy to criticize from when you don't have to deal with the pressure and stress that a coach or another athlete has to deal with. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, he's a pretty decent dude.
Good for him, and good for Liverpool, honestly. As well. Good for their fans.
For sure. So I don't even remember where we left off, to be honest. But aside from that, we were kind of talking about whether you had kind of always been a soccer fan, and you were talking a little bit about field hockey. I think you had played a little field hockey.
Yeah. Just sort of, how did I get into soccer? Like I mentioned, we didn't have soccer in school. I played some field hockey, which to a degree is similar positional wise and so on. But ended up, long story short, my dad, there was actually a game, Liverpool against Spurs, and somebody got injured, and the guy ran onto the field. And at that stage, I was getting some treatment for Achilles tendinopathy that I've had through a bit of a growth spurt, which took me out of running for a small amount of time. And my dad said, well, why don't you do what that guy does one day? I think you might find it interesting. So I said, what is he? He said, well, no, he's the physio, he works with the injuries and this and that. And I took a bit of an interest in it, and so it was actually soccer that got me interested in the career that I'm doing now. And that's probably why I'm working in football as well, because my approach is a little bit different. I don't have a soccer background. I've got a sprinting background, but the game's speed's picking up a lot. And I think it's quite important that players are exposed to a decent speed stimulus week in, week out, especially because they don't really get that opportunity to do a thorough preseason or a long training camp. The season is in itself so long already. So when it gets congested with matches, there's a lot of recovery and not really a lot of space for training. So you have to keep up the little stimulus for some speed work, week in, week out. Alternatively, as players get older or as the season gets later on, the guys lose their ability to run fast, so use it or lose it, right? And so from that perspective, I've combined that sort of sprinting background with the knowledge of physiotherapy, injury management, and so on. And I remember having the conversation with Sven because he hired me as a fitness coach, not a physiotherapist. And I asked him, well, why are you hiring me as a fitness coach? Because I can do physio as well. This is what I've qualified for. He said, well, I actually want a physio as my fitness coach because I don't want you to break my players. I want somebody who's going to keep my players on the pitch the day before the game, and especially the day of the game. I need everybody ready and everybody available. So I think that's actually, it could be where the profession's heading to a degree. Things always keep on evolving, right? Sport evolves, science starts getting a little bit involved, coaching strategies changes. Everybody's got to do something to outsmart the next one. And if we just do, you can't forget the basics, but if you just stick with the same old routines and same old drills, you're going to be found wanting, I think. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, at least from my perspective, to come in with a little bit of a fresher approach in terms of making sure that everybody runs fast as many times as possible. And let's keep them on the pitch and not in the rehab room. So
for sure. No, I think that's where so many issues arise, I think, in the realm of sports medicine or sport performances. When you get all these different coaching entities where the strength coach is trying to do their job of either increasing power, increasing strength, and then there's, there might be a speed coach or an agility coach, and they're trying to do their job, and then, then the rehab professionals are trying to do their job, and then, the sport coach is trying to do his job. And if there's not this understanding of the overall or overarching mechanisms at play, then the body can't adapt to everything, so everybody's got to be on the same page there. And I think that's probably a huge benefit, to these players to know that, they're not going to get run into the ground by their fitness coach and then be expected to lift and then also be expected to, to play hard. Like you can't do it all. So knowing where that line between, overreaching, overtraining, doing a little too much and just enough to apply a stimulus that the body can then adapt to, that's a it's a serious card you want to have in your deck, right? So that's pretty awesome.
I think that's why it's helpful to have knowledge of injury prevention, injury management, and also the periodization, coaching, and training. Because our professions, whether you look at the rehab staff and the medics versus the strength and conditioning coaches and the fitness coaches, the professions completely overlap so much. And it's very easy for the one to do the other's job and vice versa. And I think that helps me a lot because I have such a high respect for the medical staff when I'm in the role of a fitness coach, that it helps me to let them know, hey, what you're doing here is vitally important. And when you say something, I'm really going to listen. And let's apply it and let's work together to make sure that we get the optimal performance out of this athlete. And ultimately, I think the very important thing for all of us, as whether it be coaches or support staff in a bigger ship, is that everything, for example, in soccer, what we're doing is complementary to what the players need to achieve on the pitch. His sprint training and so on might not be the most important thing to do, but it is very important for his performance and his career, his or her performance and career. Once we know sort of where we slot in the bigger movement of going forward and lifting up the trophy at the end of the season, and collectively working together, I think that really is what makes it a great environment to be in, but also a very motivating environment, and also how you can achieve your success so much better if everybody collectively works together, which is pretty cool.
For sure. Yeah, if everybody's working towards the same goal, that makes it a whole lot easier to work through problems and issues as they arise instead of an up for grabs sort of thing. So let's see. So what do you consider the most important aspects for training soccer athletes? Do you have, and I know that can be hard because you're dealing with different positions and you're dealing with, potentially different fitness levels, but are there specific priorities that you're trying to focus on, either through an entire training cycle or a whole season, or is it, do you try to do everything individualized, or is there more of a group aspect to it, I guess?
It's a great question, and it's got a sort of a multifaceted answer because, of course, you have to work with the whole team in terms of generating training sessions, doing training sessions together so that the guys can gel, work together, and also collectively gain whatever it is that you desire to achieve. Mm-hmm. And then also individually, everybody's different. Like you mentioned, positions are different. Player biomedical profiles are different. So what I always try to do for myself to simplify it is I sit down with the players at the beginning of the season. Although we have standard tests that we do for the whole team, I try and make sure that every player within a few weeks has a completely individualized program that is aimed at the things that are important for him from a verbal conversation, him or her, and then also from what we established during our testing. And then from there on, with football, because the season can be so congested, you don't often have the opportunity to work or toward, maybe strength work. It might not be the best idea to have a heavy weight room session 2 days before a match or 3 days before a match and so on. So you often, in the middle of the season, find yourself working more towards recovery, getting ready for the next match. And because of that, when there's a congested period, it's very important to start doing small things right continuously, little things every day, whether it be a few contacts of plyometrics, whether it be a little bit of nutritional work, whether it be a little bit of strength work, rotational work, speed work, whatever it is. Accumulation over a period of time still allows you to achieve those goals that you set for yourself. And then from that perspective, it really is important to say, well, when we get about here, we try and achieve something. It's not that the player has to lift more or lift heavier. What is he doing on his performance? How's he feeling on the field? How does he feel after 2 close games together and so on? So managing football is a bit of a holistic thing in terms of what do we do for the squad together? What do I do for the players individually? And then communication and motivation is quite important to make sure that, hey, Kevin, if you're my player, how are you going today? How did you feel about the training session yesterday? Do you think we should do something different? How did you respond to this training? Okay, we've been through this program for 2 or 3 months now. You've mentioned that you feel stronger and faster. Should we continue doing that? Do you think we need to step back and so on? What do we need to change? And often what I actually ask the guys is, what do you hate doing? What do you not want me to do with you? Like, I'm not going to try and do power cleans with you if you hate an Olympic bar. That's just completely counterproductive. Yeah. So it really is about building a relationship. And I think for me, that comes from track and field, where I've coached track and field athletes where, athletes analyze not just themselves, but they also analyze other athletes that they compete against, right? And that's in the field of track and field, the sport of track and field. But in football, I try and analyze the guys as much as I can and build a relationship with them to help them also believe that, hey, man, I can be in a big club that I desire to be in one day, or I can represent my national team. And the English rugby coach, Clive Woodward, a long time ago said, for this, England's had a bit of a deviation of the story here, but to make a point, England had a very poor run in rugby World Cups and stuff like that. They just haven't performed well. And for a country where the World Cup had started, or rugby had started as a sport, they were just getting knocked out of the World Cup quarterfinal and stuff like that. Never did well. And he took over, and they said to him, like, what must this team do to get better? And he said, well, we have to improve 100%. And people were laughing. That's kind of obvious. We're not doing really well. How are you going to do that? He says, well, I mean, we need to do 100 things 1% better. And that really is what it is about for us these days. We got to find those small little things, especially in a team sport. If we've got, excluding the goalkeeper, if we've got 10 players on the field, if each one of them can improve by 5%, that's a substantial difference towards the whole team's ability on the pitch on that day or in that season. So I do focus on smaller things, try get a culture and a winning mentality and a dedication towards work and improvement going, which I think is quite nice and quite motivating for players as well.
So do you, this is one of the things that, one thing that you mentioned made me think about, and that was, accumulating volume. Like you don't have to do an entire workout where the entire focus might be on, plyometrics or speed and agility. As long as you're getting a little bit, and then you can compound that, over a few weeks or over a few months, whatever the case may be. I noticed that a lot of people, like even today, so I had a client who likes to complain when she's not sore. Like she thinks, DOMS or soreness is the measure of the quality of a workout, and I had to explain to her like, no, that's not a very good measure. So, do you ever have to? Are you ever in a position where you have to kind of justify what you're doing either to the players or to other coaching staff to say, hey, like my goal is not to do this, it's to do this other thing because I'm looking 6 months from now, not just how they're going to perform this weekend or next week, something like that.
Yeah, you would have heard that term quality versus quantity, right? And it is a question that it pops up every now and then with some players. They're like, push me a bit more. I want to get better. Or they are just so motivated. As 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, and he had a successful, scored a goal. He scored 2 goals, and he just wants to be the best goal scorer and keep on working. And, when you have that, it's magnificent to work with. That doesn't mean that you have to run the guy into the ground. But I think what helps me a lot is the fact that I do come with a big medical background to make sure that, I do have those risk versus reward lights go off. Is it really necessary to push this guy so much? Yes or no? So I often think about it like this. If you're going to go, run the Olympic final or play the Champions League final or something today, or if it's a big, think about it like if it's a horse race, that horse is going to give 140% or at least 100%, right, to win the cup or whatever it is. And when you train that horse, you kind of hold him back a little bit. You don't let him do that in training. You don't push him because it's just not worth it. And that's often how I think about when I train the guys. I don't want to specifically just hold them back. But with certain types of exercises, it is just not worth it to push it all that way. The risk is just too much. So, you don't want to kill a guy's spirits when he really is motivated to, like that lady you mentioned, I want to feel the DOMS, I want to feel the burn and so on. You don't want to kill their spirits, but there are ways to still get a very, very effective workout in where, it could be something like a very hard anaerobic type of workout where they are blowing out a heart rate of, X plus their max. And they feel like they've really done well. And what you've done is you've achieved a lot in a small amount of time without carrying that risk of an injury happening or them being too sore tomorrow to continue the workout and so on. So I think you've got to know your athletes. You got to go in with an idea of saying, well, this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what I'm not comfortable with, and then you work with that.
For sure, I like that. So what are some areas that you address with your athletes from a nutritional perspective?
A lot. Nutrition makes a big part. Like I mentioned to you earlier, if we can change 100 things and improve 100 things 1%, nutrition makes a big part of that. 1% breakfast, 1% lunch, 1% dinner, 1% your first snack, 1% your next snack. That's already 5%. So nutrition, we are what we eat, and what you put in is what you put out. So these are important things to remember. And it often can make the difference between you having that last bit of energy when you have to go into overtime or extra time, or when you are just happening to play in a temperature of 33 or 34 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It might be like 90 Fahrenheit.
It's really hot.
It's hot, yeah. So fluid loss is crazy. Should we think about salt loading if we know the temperature is hot, to maintain our fluid levels, to make sure we don't lose too much electrolytes and our guys don't cramp up in the last 15 minutes? So for me, in my work environment, I don't want to say I refuse to work without a nutritionist, but I would absolutely put my hand up and say, well, if you sign me, if I can work here, please make sure we have a nutritionist or a dietitian to work with us. It is vitally important. It's very motivational for players. And what I've found is it's just interesting that a lot of sportsmen, and this is through the bank, soccer, I'm imagining American football, track and field, they just don't have the knowledge, and you can't blame them for it. It's just they have never been exposed to it, perhaps. Nobody has educated them on it. We have a ton of research out these days, and for lack of reading a scientific paper or picking up a textbook or something, as coaches, we simply can't make that mistake by not giving our players or our athletes the knowledge that they require or need. But nutrition for me really is a massive thing. We've gotten to points where on pre-match meals, we make sure that we don't get acidic foods or acidic drinks involved, because it limits the rate at which ATP is produced during a match and stuff like that. So we've gone into sort of a micro-analysis, making sure that we give the guys as much as they can. How many grams of protein should they eat immediately after training in the first half hour? If they take too much, what happens to it? Or should we have an X amount here and then an X amount an hour later, and so on? So we place a tremendous amount, or at least from my perspective, I place a tremendous amount of importance on nutrition. I think it's vital.
For sure, yeah. I consider, training and diet, like, they're two sides to the same coin. Like, if you want to maximize the effects of the other, like, you have to have a handle on both. So I feel like one of the things you mentioned there is kind of nutrient timing, like that window after training. A lot of times the general public likes to lock in on that and focus just on, the timing. I like to explain, like, nutrient timing's important. It's a priority, but it's not as important as doing something that you can adhere to on a daily basis and focusing on making sure you're getting enough calories for the day, and then focusing on your macronutrients, and then focusing on your micronutrients. So do you guys place a lot of emphasis on not just what they're doing before training, during training, after training, but also, like, are they actually fueling enough calorie wise for the day? Do you have someone tracking that stuff with them, or do you teach them how to do that? I guess what kind of stuff do you do on that side of things?
Good question. Many answers. You try and control, or we at least try and control what we can. So if our guys have a 11 a.m. training session, they rock up, 8:30 breakfast is there, so we know what they get for breakfast. They have their post-match drinks as they come off the field, so we can control that in terms of a nutrient timing perspective as well. And then they'll have their lunch there afterward. If it's a single training day, and we can't control dinner, so we don't know what happens there. So you're hoping that your education sticks. They are also human.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can't blame them if something doesn't go according to the schedule. But also if we are fortunate to work in a professional sports team environment. My clients are my 30 players that I work with, so I try and perfect things for them as much as I possibly can. And I take that burden away from them. So like I mentioned to you, they come off the pitch and their sort of bar areas there where their drinks are there with their names on, with these vitamins that we picked up from the blood test that they need. And when it comes to a person from the general public who's just a client or just goes for a nice workout at, run at the gym, whatever, they would have to plan for these things themselves, whether it's, taking their own drinks, organizing their own supplements, and so on and so on. So there's a little bit more, I suppose there needs to be a bit more of a desire and a dedication. They're not getting sort of mollycoddled and everything handed on a platter to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we try and control, to get back to your question, we try control what we can. We try educate as much as we can. They do say old habits die hard. It's difficult. But there's some research out that says it takes about 14 days to get into a routine, right? So if you can do, your 50 push-ups every day for 14 days, you're going to have X amount more than your neighbor come 14 days, and probably going to want to do it because your body's going to, hey man, something's missing. I'm craving that stimulus you gave me. Give it back. So we try a lot of positive reinforcement on things like that, and I think it sticks. It helps. So it's not always a home run like you would say in baseball or a hit, but in general, you get there. That's good.
Yeah, and when I've noticed when you can get a few athletes to buy into it, then that sorts the snowball effect, and usually other people will buy into it as well. So
well, the other important thing for us as well is to practice what we preach. You can't. I hope I don't offend people when I say it, but you can't have an overweight dietitian standing there, or a fitness coach who's unable to walk up a flight of stairs. It's just not going to fly. Yeah. So we are. That's a way of motivation, I think, as well. So we practice what we preach, and we really should be able to give across a really decent, motivating, good message, at least by our lifestyle as well. So
yeah. Do you ever throw down and race with your athletes? Let them know you still got it.
I make a point of it that I'm faster than my players. So.
That's awesome.
And it works to a point, but no, I also, there's a fine line between coaching and being a coach player. And if you're a coach, I step out of the field. It's not my place. It's not for me to have some fun and stuff there. I do when I do some training with the guys individually. Maybe it's a guy it's had an injury, a muscle strain, or whatever the deal is, and he comes back. It's much better for them to run with somebody or to train with somebody, especially the running stuff, than just by themselves. It's a bit demotivating. So from that perspective, I like doing that, giving them some pace and so on. But when it's a team training session, it's not my place, so I stay away. Maybe I just secretly tell myself, I still got it.
Yeah. That's what I noticed. Like the youth athletes that I work with, every once in a while, I'm just like, man, these kids are so cocky. They think they can beat me.
You know, like, a cool thing happened to me once. That first manager, Clive Barker, I worked with, and he knew when I started working with him, I was still running professionally or semi-professionally. But he did a cool thing one day, and he was telling them, look, he's going to national championships now, whatever the deal is. Let's have a race. Let's get our 5 fastest players and have a thing around the nets there and back, or the goals and back. And it turned out such a hectic vibe. The players were getting involved, and they were experiencing, and they were taking bets, and the guys were throwing like their 10 rands, which is like the equivalent to $1, whatever, on the ground. And
nice.
It created an exceptional atmosphere and just a general training day. Of course, I did well. I didn't want to lose, but you know what it did? It kind of like it puts you more in the group, right? The players, they feel like they won with you a little bit. They know that you're not just to chase them around stuff.
Exactly.
You practice what you preach, and it actually was a cool thing that he did. That Sven did a similar thing when we were on touring camp in Turkey, where we were doing some high volume hypertrophy work with some of the defenders, and he was saying, okay, well, this has gone well. So we had like a light bar, I think it was about 35 kgs or something. He said, well, you bench that as many times as you can, and we take our new signed defender from Korea. Let's see what he can do. So it was a wonderful way, again, of getting the Korean player in the Chinese team involved with myself, who's the fitness coach, and the two of us going head to head, and all the players are around you and motivating and clapping and stuff. And it's a good camaraderie. It creates a great team atmosphere. So maybe the right answer is there's a time and a place for everything. And if that's your outcome, I think it's magnificent. It's fantastic for the whole team setup. So it's cool.
For sure.
And it probably makes you feel pretty decent. So
exactly. When you can throw in games where the stakes aren't really high, the outcome doesn't, it doesn't affect things too much, but like everybody wants to, to cheer. Like you said, like everybody's going to get fired up about that. So that's good stuff. So yeah, every once in a while I'll throw in a little sprint against some of my guys just to let them know, like, hey, you might beat me, but you're gonna have to work for it.
Otherwise,
it's not
you're
gonna be
that's
easy.
how you do it.
Exactly.
Got it? Let's go.
That's good stuff. So, do you how do you stay on the cutting edge as far as new information, new research? How do you stay on top of that to make sure that you're providing, either best practices or best research and data so that you have the best treatments or the best training stimulus? How do you stay sharp?
Yeah, good question. It's important that we stay updated with stuff. I read an interesting stat the other day. I think we had said it every 3 months or 4 months, the amount of knowledge in the field almost doubles, with the amount of research and stuff that's going on today. So it really is important that we stay up to date. Like I've mentioned before, I'm completing a doctorate at the moment, and that's been quite nice, at least from a research perspective, to keep you up to date. And I work with 2 wonderful physios as well at our club, and we always say to ourselves, well, if we're going to do something, why are we doing it? Let's ask why, and let's ask, is it the best thing to do, or is there a placebo effect, or what's the deal? What's going on? I do think, with sports science these days, there's so much research happening and so many things going on that it has to be applicable to your players, your team, and your field to make sure that you understand it correctly. And we should also not lose grip of the fact that we still are coaches. And don't ever lose your coaching eye because in the research article told you that X percentage of something is going to pick up an injury. And it's important to remember those things. But often when you see a play like something's wrong there, let me go ask him. I don't need a GPS to tell me that this guy's running stats, maybe something's wrong. You really need to. It's a good indicator, but you also can't lose your eye for coaching. But I do place a high emphasis on research. We try to do evidence-based practice with all our physiotherapy treatments that we do as much as we can, even though it is a very practice-based, especially the rehab component is very practice-based in terms of what can this player endure, what can that player endure versus the other one, or this age group versus that age group, and so on. But we have to ask the question, why are we doing it? What's the latest research saying? What's the sensitivity of this test? What's the validity of this test? What's specificity? What's going on? Is it the best thing out there? Should we use a cluster of tests to check something? We are in a very, very high pressured environment in professional soccer where, we play a game on Sunday, we might have another cup quarterfinal or semifinal on Wednesday. So if our star striker took a muscle knock on Sunday, that diagnosis needs to be made very quickly. So that we can immediately tell the manager, listen, this guy's available or he's not available, or we need to make sure that we send him for the correct investigation, because we can't go for an investigation today and then it's the wrong one and tomorrow have to go again because he has to get ready and prep for the match. So it's important that you trust your coaching eye, keep on developing it, don't lose it, but you have to stay updated with the latest research and make sure that you improve yourself in that regard.
For sure. I find that if you go to like a coaching clinic or a conference, and then as soon as you get home, you're immediately trying to implement everything that you just learned, then you probably weren't doing the right stuff to begin with. So as much as possible, when I go to a conference, let's say, I do my best, because sometimes I get excited. I'm like, oh, I know exactly how I can implement this with this client or with this group, and this is going to change everything. And then, I might do that a week, and then I'm back to doing what I was doing before, or I try something different. And it's like all the new stuff that's coming out, it's rarely in a form that's going to be applicable to you and to the athletes that you're working with. So before you just try to make it fit into your program, digest it a little bit, chew on it a little bit before you just try to throw it in there. So I think what you were saying about having that coaching eye, that reminds me of a teacher I had in grad school who he would call it the keen eye. And he was always talking about it's really, really important to have a keen eye. And we'd always, all of us classmates would crack up about it when he would say it, because we were like, I don't think this guy's ever coached anything. But but he would
what the eye's for, right?
Exactly. He was always talking about having a keen eye, and that's so important. Like if you're in the trenches, you can't just expect this piece of research that came out to have this huge change or have this huge impact. But if you're aware of what's coming in, of the new stuff that's being studied, and then you can start to work that in, then then it's worthwhile for sure. But as a young coach, when I first started, I just wanted to, it's new, okay, I'm going to use it. And then it took me a little while to figure out, that's probably you don't need fancy new equipment. You don't have to do this fancy new movement. Am I teaching my athletes how to move more effectively, to move more efficiently with less risk of injury? And am I building their capacity and their volume so that they can be on the field more or whatever? And I was like, as long as I'm doing that, I can sprinkle this new stuff in every once in a while, see how it works.
Well, it's important to remember that repetition is not at all a bad thing. Even if it's repeating exercises that might be considered old or something like that. We've both got sprint backgrounds, and I remember very clearly I got to a point for my 400. I think I was running it. My PB was 48.3 or something, and I needed to get it better. And my coach said, listen, we need to get you on a squat program. We need to get you to improve your strength, your explosive strength, and all that stuff. And we did a 6-week program. and continued over, I think, another 4 weeks or so, and then got to the first race, and I knocked a complete second off my PB. Got in a 47.3 or something like that.
Nice.
And the point I'm trying to make is I remember running the last 100, and I just had so much more power in my legs, my thighs, my quads. I could just feel like I almost look like Michael Johnson going down the magnificent. I feel like pistons pumping, and I feel like a freaking legend,
Yeah.
But the fact is that for me, the experience I had with that type of a program, I knew how it felt, and I could see the results in my time and what it did. And to this day, I believe that squats, whether it's once a week or depending on how many matches we are and so on, is a crucial, vital part of my players' speed training program. What does the research say about it? Yeah, the research is very favorable about it, sure. The timing of it, I think that's probably quite an important thing to look at and research. But this is an old strategy that I repeat over and over and over again because I believe it works and I believe it's effective. Now, the interesting thing is, like with all this new stuff coming out is, like I've said to you before, what we do is complementary to what the players do on the pitch. So if we've got a program that we know these are my basics that I'm going to stick with because it's tested through season. It's injury preventative. It ticks off the boxes in terms of strength and power development and so on for my players, or it gets me to the goals that they want me to achieve for them. These new things that are coming out, how can that complement what I'm doing? How can I put that in? Should there be an accessory or an auxiliary movement to the squat? Should I do a high box jump? Should I do 2 of them? Should I do a power run? Should I do it for 2 seconds, for 4 seconds? Or, what should I do afterward in terms of what does the research say there? And if you apply it like that, I think you're going to go places and you're going to get it right. Sometimes I think it's not just trial and error, but you have to test it. You have to see if it does work. But that's the benefit of staying up to date with stuff, because if you can use what is applicable to what you want to achieve with your players from what you can find in the research and what you are already using, combine those, I think you're going to get a very successful strategy that's going to motivate your players and get them to perform better, which is pretty cool.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the best of both worlds. That's where you've got one foot in the science and you've got one foot in the art, and that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
That's good stuff. So, is there any like book that you're reading right now that whether it's sport related or any, it could be anything. Is there anything that you're currently reading or studying or learning about right now that you are finding very valuable?
Yeah, you're gonna laugh at me. I'm actually reading a history book on Genghis Khan.
Nice.
Who Mongolia.
Yeah.
And conquered the whole world. Then I'm also reading a bit of my own country's history. Now that we're living in Vienna, I'm reading about the Habsburg history because these guys, they're the big deal here, and this was all the way up to World War I, what it was about. But yeah, reading is important. But yes, I do. I've read a few sports books. I've got Everyday's Game Day from Exos. I've read that recently. It was pretty cool. With my doctorate, I did some anatomy train stuff lately. I placed quite a big emphasis on rotational strength for my football players, so I enjoy that, which is pretty cool. And people always say, like, where am I going to be in 5 years, right? Or if you ask the question, how can you know where you're going to be in 5 years? Well, it depends on two things. It depends on what you're reading, and it depends on who you hang out with. So reading. I'm not saying I'm going to conquer Mongolia in 5 years. I'm just finding that fascinating, at least because I'm in the area and I live there, and it's quite nice to read up a bit of the history of where you are. But I also did listen to an interesting podcast the other day where the guy was saying, if you read for an hour a day something about your field of interest, sports medicine in our case, then in 5 years' time you will become a national expert at what you are doing. So a lot of my reading, simply also because I've just recently completed a research project, was on physical therapy stuff, sports medicine stuff. So it takes up a lot of time, but you find gaps to do it, man, whether it's in the car on the way training, whether it's just between training sessions and stuff. I try and do with my reading like I do with my training, whether it's just that quick 100 push-ups in the morning, or whether it's just a quick 10-minute EMOM exercise in the morning or something like that. A quick chapter here or a quick something there. keeps the clock ticking, right?
For sure.
Towards those goals where you want to be, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you don't have to consume an entire book in a week or an entire chapter in a day. Like, you can, when you chunk it and break it up, like, that gives you time to actually think about it and digest it. So I think that's a good way to do it. Like, I listen to probably, I'm in my car a lot. Like, I drive quite a bit for work. So if I don't have like a Joe Rogan podcast going on or some sort of training podcast going on, like, I honestly feel like I'd be wasting my time just driving. So I try to view that as an opportunity to learn, because I'm just moving in my car. My brain can still do multiple things at once. So
time is an extremely valuable commodity, and if you can apply it correctly, it's fascinating to see the results.
For sure. Yeah, when you mentioned Genghis Khan, that cracks me up. Like, I love history.
Con Eagleton, that's the name of the guy who did it, and he's got 5 books, and it's the historical accuracy is actually amazing. It must be about 90%. It's pretty cool. So nice. Read it. You feel like you're a freaking warrior, man. You're getting in there, you're getting involved.
That's
you're
good
minusing some guys, you're doing something that's cool. So it's but that, I mean, what a story of an incredible empire. You know, it's really magnificent.
For sure. Yeah, they. I think I watched a documentary a while back, kind of about that. It was about like genetic evolution. And one of the things that they talked specifically about was one of the reasons the Mongols were so successful is because they had the enzyme to break down.
Kevin, I've got a very poor connection. I'm not hearing you at all.
Oh, okay. 1 second. We'll catch it up.
It just says, I didn't get anything you said just now. Back it up a little bit, yeah.
Gotcha.
And
so
it's frozen.
Oh.
Everybody in Vienna is going home, so things are freezing, or everybody's jumping on the network or something. I don't know.
I gotcha. We can
okay, there you go. Yeah,
oh,
I got you.
Awesome. So, let's see. I'll back it up a little bit.
I think after that, Gengis Khan comment, Eagleton, yeah. I think I missed you after that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think you were starting a question.
Oh, I was saying I watched a documentary about genetic evolution, and they were explaining that one reason, just one, because there were plenty of reasons, but one reason the Mongols were so successful is because they had the enzymes to break down milk, and most of the areas they were conquering, like the populations there, could not digest milk, so they were literally riding on their grocery store, like their horses. They were consuming the milk from their horses, and the fat content and the protein content just like made these guys ridiculous.
It's very true. They have their staple diet is pretty much lamb, milk, meat, potatoes.
Yeah.
Makes for strong teeth, strong bones. You know, the blades don't really cut through them so easily.
Yeah, and you can produce a whole lot more force.
Yeah, my wife and I, we were fortunate to travel there, and I tell you what, first of all, it's a magnificent country and people should go visit it. But it is cold. We were not even there in winter. We went around about late April, May, I think, when it's supposed to be summer, and you would drive around and you would just see dead animals because they caved over last night, freezing to death. It was too cold outside. And that was not even at a time there was snow on the ground and stuff like that. So it tells you, I think, something about the people, especially 800 years ago, 8 centuries ago. You really got to take your hat off and say, well done, man. That was the interesting about Mongolia is they don't ask you how old you are. They ask you how many winters you've survived. There you have it.
Yeah, you got to be resilient for sure. To deal with that kind of weather. Yeah, that's why I moved down here to Texas. So actually, the reason I moved down here to Texas was to go to Baylor because of Michael Johnson, because of Jeremy Warner, because of amazing 400-meter runners, but also
Clyde Hart. Has he retired or is he still coaching?
Last I checked, he was still head of track and field, but I don't think he was doing as much coaching. So, but
Warner, what a great athlete, man! Wonderful person as well.
Oh yeah. He's coaching at a high school here in Dallas now. He's their track coach. So
good for them. They're very fortunate to have him.
Yeah, he's a good dude. So, but yeah, but yeah, the other reason I moved down here is because of the weather. Like I can't deal with the cold. I'm not built for that. So
Yeah, man, I'm with you there.
yeah, a couple years in the Philippines really reduced my ability to even want to deal with the winter. So, but shoot, man. So, is there any piece of advice? Oh, before we jump to that, how do you pick a competent and effective either sport performance coach or fitness coach? If you were an athlete and you're looking for somebody to help you improve your speed, your agility, your quickness, your reaction time, your aerobic capacity, how would you, what information would you have them ask, or like how do you find somebody who's in the role that you have who's very competent?
I think the two main things would be to have a look at the track record. Has this guy achieved similar to what you're hoping to achieve with other athletes? I think that's important. And then motivation. I think motivation is the single key thing, one of the two key things. I mean, so much happens up here versus, if you have the correct dedication and desire, you can make your body the ultimate machine. But so much apart from that is up here. And if you can find somebody that can, press the button correctly on you and motivate you the right way and get you to perform better, get you to give more, I think that is big. If you can find that person that can motivate you to be the best you can be and beyond, that would be the person to stick with, I think.
Gotcha. That's excellent. So how can everybody who's listening right now, how can they follow you? How can they follow your team? What's the best way to keep a keen eye on Divan?
Well, my wife and I've got an Instagram account. It's called Dester Adventures, so you can have a look at that. I'm on Facebook, just Divan Augustyn. I'm out there. Our team is Guangzhou R&F out of China. It could be a little bit difficult to get hold of the Chinese social media, but it is what it is. I'm also not on social media all that much. I probably should make an effort. I'm sort of the pre-millennial, so I gotta educate myself a little bit. But yeah, there's that. And
awesome.
Yeah, just advice for people. I would say, don't be afraid to be amazing. Be dedicated. Have the desires and the goals, and just go for it. You're only a step away or a decision away from achieving everything you want to achieve and beyond. But you have to have the dedication, and don't be scared to fail. But also don't be afraid to be amazing. Just go for it.
Awesome. Divan, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed talking with you. I'd love to get you on again sometime in the future so we can, talk a little bit more trash about our favorite soccer teams maybe. And
no, I'm joking.
Man, shoot, with guys like Harry Kane and Dele Alli, man, Tottenham's legit. Son he's had an amazing season.
Good season. It was a good season, everybody. I must say, as much as I'm a Spurs fan, I also felt for Ajax. I thought they had a great season, a great young bunch of players. It was a good football year. It was good to watch it all. And in my opinion, I think ultimately justice was served. It was the right team that won it, even though it's hard to say it, but that's what I think.
I agree. The right team did win.
Well, have a wonderful day, man. Nice chatting to you.
Hey, I'll see you around, man. Have a good one.
Cool. Cheers.